And hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Tectonic Lounge. This is Serge from Code Engine Studio, and with us today is Joel, co-founder and co-CEO of Vygo. Welcome, Joel.
Thank you, mate. I'm excited to be on the show today.
All right. For those of you who didn't know, Joel's from Australia, so it's our first Australian guest, and we're excited to do that to capture another continent and country on our roster. For those tuning in for the first time, we are a software development company, Code Engine Studio. We help our partners work through projects, whether it's startups or whether it's continuing to grow applications that bring value to their customers. And Joel caught my attention because the project Vygo is very similar to the area we're interested in. And it focuses on mentoring and education. Am I catching that one right?
Yep, that's it.
So I guess my first question is, you just woke up one morning and you had this brilliant idea that you needed a nap, or is there a little bit more to the story of how the need for this was realized?
Yeah, I don't know. I've never met a founder that just woke up and had this brilliant idea that never went through any iteration. But it definitely, I feel like, as Steve Jobs kind of talks about, when I look back, I can connect all the dots, but none of the dots at the time kind of make any sense to me. But education is just a giant passion of mine. Like, my life is dedicated to education. So however I can, whether it's through Vygo or any ventures I do in the future, I want to be there pushing education forward. And it's because I just believe that education is the single biggest engine for social change, for social mobility, for changing people's lives. Education is the great equalizer. And I didn't get to that realization, just waking up from a nap one day, but it was really from my own experiences in education. I didn't come really from a family of much education. No one in the history of the generations of my family had ever even graduated school. Like, they'd gone to grade 10. I don't know what that is in America, but they still had a couple of years left, and they're all, that was enough for them. They dropped out and went and got different jobs. So, starting out in schooling, there wasn't, these big expectations or even, realizations of what was possible. And so I started school just, thinking I'm just going to, I was 5. I had no idea what I was thinking, but, there wasn't ever this big path to go forward. Then as soon as I started school, I was just immediately, not that smart. I got held down. I was diagnosed with a lot of learning challenges, learning difficulties. So learning and education just wasn't a thing for me. It wasn't like the path. So as I went through, I was just thinking, I'm just going to have, one of those normal lives. So I'm definitely not going to university. I'm not going to college. I'm just going to get the same job as my family and kind of keep on that path. But because I was struggling so much, I just figured that would be normal. But I had these incredible teachers around me, teachers that would teach me how to read and write properly on the weekends. They would come into school and give me gold stars, when I could cut shapes out or color in the lines and stuff like that. So I was always surrounded by exceptional people and exceptional teachers I didn't realize. And as I went through school, I always had these people pushing me forward and supporting me forward. And as I got to the end of school and got to grade 10, where, my family had hit their limit, I went past grade 10 and my whole family was just like, whoa, maybe you're smart. And I'd always thought I was just a dumb kid. And because, I had all these challenges and then I went past that and I was like, maybe I'm not so dumb. And then near the end of school, I had this teacher that was like, you should have a crack at getting into university. And I was like, no. He's like, just have a try. So I had to go. I went through it. I ended up graduating school, which was like in itself was a huge moment for my family and for myself. And then I made it into university. I made it into college, and I was like, I'm smart. And I started to think I'm smart, and I got into university, and I'm walking around, my chest puffed out, like, look at this, I'm going to be an engineer. And I just started failing straight away. Like, first piece of assessment, fail. Next piece of assessment, fail. It just kind of didn't matter what I did. I did not understand how university worked. And this whole university space just like freaked me out. I did not feel like I belonged there. It was just this massive challenge. And I'd been surrounded by these incredible teachers that just weren't there anymore, like holding my hand and pushing me through. So I kept failing, and I thought, I'll come in earlier. I'll stay back later. I'll sit at the front of the class. I'll study harder. And it just didn't matter what I did. I just kept failing. I even went and spoke to a career advisor at one point, and he said, he pulled up my report, he looked at my data, and he said, you know what? The chances are you're going to drop out. It's such a low chance that you make it through. You should consider dropping out now and not taking on the debt. I was like, who is this guy? But it didn't matter, because I had this experience that
Yeah,
just
that's
like fundamentally
disappointing.
shifted things for me. And I was sitting on campus on this one day, and I'm looking at these two parts ahead of me. Right, one path is like I'm a failure. I had the paper and the academic advisor to prove it to me that I'm a failure in university. And the other part that I'm looking at is, it's like my my dad's a concreter, my brothers are concreters, literally all of my uncles are concreters. I was like, I'm meant to be a concreter. That's my destiny. And right as I'm thinking about dropping out, I guess, like, in that moment, if nothing else, I think I just kind of felt helpless. And I don't think that's a unique feeling. I think everyone's, I'm sure you've gone through times in your life where you didn't know where to go, you didn't know where to turn. Like, it's not a unique feeling, but I'm feeling real helpless at this moment. And this guy came up to me completely by chance, and he walks up and he just says, "Hey mate, what's going on?" And man, I just poured my heart out. I was like, everything sucks. Like, right moment, right time. And this guy just sat down with me for like an hour and asked me questions and talked to me. And at the end, he said this. He said, "Yeah, mate, first year is really hard. I failed a couple subjects myself." And it gives me goosebumps to think about that, because like a light bulb went off in my head at that moment where I was just like, if he failed, this really awesome, cool fourth year guy failed, maybe I can be here. So I was like, screw it, I'm coming back tomorrow. So I came back the next day, and then I came back the next day and the next day. And that moment set me on a different path. Like, I went from failing to passing to somehow I got honors in my degree, and I got my dream job. And more than that, I got to meet my wife at college and my best friend and my business partners. Like, my whole life is on a different path because of one person. So that experience is what shaped the entire idea behind Vygo. Like, I want to give that moment to people, because it only takes one moment to light a fire, to light that passion inside you, to set you on a different path. And if that guy didn't come up to me, it would have never happened for me. I don't know where I'd be. But now I'm here. And so I built Vygo because that's all I wanted to do. I wanted to give people that experience. And I mean, it didn't always look like it looks now. It's gone through so many iterations. The first version of our platform was literally a phone number. We used to just put up posters all around universities just with my phone number on them and said, "Do you need help?" And people would just text me, and I'd put up other posts saying, "Can you help with these things?" And people would text me. And so we've definitely gone through a lot of different iterations. But yeah, I didn't wake up thinking this is my idea, but I feel like when looking back, my whole life led to being in this space.
You gave several really good pearls of wisdom here that I want to kind of capitalize on and dig a little bit deeper. I love the idea of the phone number being the first iteration. We often talk about when people try to build MVP, they over-engineer, right? The idea of an MVP for a car is not four wheels and a chassis that you can't use. It's a skateboard. So in your case, you wanted to create a system that people could get help without getting lucky. I mean, let's just be honest. You got lucky that guy sat down next to you, because if you didn't, you don't know where your path would have been. One would call it providential, luck, whatever you want to call it, but that's not a systematic approach. You can't rely on every student who's struggling at uni getting lucky with a fourth year student sitting down next to them at the right time. So you were trying to create a system that will create that support for them. And the MVP for it was just a phone number. Obviously, it doesn't scale, because otherwise you'd be on the phone 24 hours a day with how many unis you could push it to. So you then chose to go scale. And I do look at mentorship in general as this idea of giving guidance to energy and force, because as you described it yourself, you were trying harder, right? You were pushing, you were trying, coming in early, staying in late, doing extra work, and it wasn't working. And whether it was a motivational thing, whether it was just you were slightly off track, right? Swimming harder doesn't necessarily mean you're going to swim to the right direction. We got Olympics coming up, so I'm using a little swimming analogy here. But you actually have to be in the right pool and going down the right track. And I think that's a very powerful thing to consider. And so the passion was there from the beginning, and you care about education and mentorship. You started with a phone number. People call you for support. How did that roll over to idea of a product? Because obviously students are broke and they're not going to necessarily pay for somebody to guide them. But how did you say, okay, I can actually make a product out of this?
Yeah, I think from the beginning, we always wanted to turn this into a product. I think I just grew up at the right time to see the Uberification of the world, the marketplace of like, takeover of the world, the takeover of, apps in people's pockets with these supercomputers, people walking. Like, I saw this all happen at the right time, and I just had this fundamental underlying belief that people, like, when given the opportunity to connect in that moment that I did, like, people would take that up and that would be valuable to people. I didn't know exactly where the monetization would come from, but I always knew that, like, there would be a product here, and there would be like a marketplace that might work for this. So we went through so many iterations of our business. Like, the
Okay.
first one was like just texting my number, and then the second one was a website that had my phone number on it. And then eventually, we got to a point where we released an app, and it was on, as basic as it could be as an app to connect people on different phones. Like, we had the ability to people come in, and at that point in time, we were like, cool, let's just do this as a straight consumer play. We understand students. We were recently students. Let's just get as many people on here that want to help each other, and as many people on here that need help as possible, and pay. And, like, at the time, we saw, like, the going rate of tutoring. We thought, let's nail down a niche, and let's go with the tutoring aspect for help. It was, people were paying $70-$80. I'm like, cool, let's give it out for $25. And because when you have a marketplace, we flood the market and we can bring the price down. We thought that would be a great play. We take a clip off the ticket. We saw the millions that were going to roll into our bank account. We quickly realized, you were right, students don't have that much money, even though it's much cheaper. They're struggling to survive. And so then we started working with universities, and we're just like, oh, well, what if we work with a university and then they actually fund this for students? And that started to help us grow. And then over time, we started to see, actually, this isn't just about tutoring or mentoring. It's about relationships and connection. So over time, we learned more and more about how universities try and support their students. And we just kept following, in a sense, the money. Like, we had the passion for this. We knew the problem we wanted to solve, but we wanted to see who's already trying to solve it. What are the practices in place? Where is money already being spent in the space? And we saw that universities really care about this, and universities lose a lot of money when a student doesn't get the results they're after when they drop out. So we thought, well, let's solve it for universities. So underneath everything, we're solving this for students. But we realized that when we solve it for students, that also is a massive challenge for universities. And so this way, it's a win-win. The university gets to retain their students and get them the outcomes they want. We get to help students, and we get to build this business that creates impact all over the world.
Yeah, that you guys did a great job in creating this multi-dimensional value, and that's what I'm looking at. Because, as you said, retention, and I've been around university systems for years. Retention is a huge expense, and obviously, if you look at an average, I'm not sure about Australian tuitions right now, but in the United States, an average state school is about 35 to 40,000 a year, and if you lose the student, after the first year, you missed out on over 100 grand of revenue, and the cost of customer acquisition for that retention is much lower than bringing in a brand new student. You have to recruit, assess, train, put in the right classes, make sure they have a chance of survival, and we all know, retaining an existing customer is always easier than getting a new one. And I think that's true for universities.
Yeah.
So you created value for them, providing a service that they have a need for, but they cannot necessarily scale. And it's one more thing for them to worry about, right? And then for the student, you already described the obvious need. It's removing that stress. And so, it goes into a fun conversation of who really is a customer and who's a service for. But I think it's a great paradigm. So since we are a tech company and we care about software, the current model you guys are in, you're running through an app. Tell me more about the technology you guys made choice of, and how did you get to that choice?
It started as an app, and now we're just kind of like, what you would expect from any platform is that we can connect on any medium, really, or any modal. But I guess, where do you want to dive into the tech? Like, do you care about the stack, or how much we built ourselves, how much we use external plugins? Like, what element of the stack do you want to dive into?
Yeah, I think the choice you made in the stack, I think that's always a fascinating question, because we often get a lot of potential customers asking, do I go React? Do I go .NET? Why should I go those? We even did an episode that just released specifically talking about how you make that choice. but I wanted to hear how you guys made that choice of the stack.
Yeah, look, it was really simple for us. So first of all, our stack is almost everything Google. So if Google does it, we use it. So everything in the Google family, you know, Firestore, Firebase, Cloud Functions, and then we also use Angular, which is kind of Google's adopted language. So that's what we use. We built almost everything ourselves. We do use a couple of external things for like video or calendar integrations, but it's pretty much all built in house. And we try and control as much as we can of the experience. Why do we do that? Because our co-founder knew how to build in that. And that's the only reason. And then we just kept on going. You know, as we built the team, we built our team around our co-founder who had the tech experience. And he was just like, I know how to build on this. Let's keep hiring people with Angular experience. Like, great, let's go nuts. And for a long time, we wanted to hire people that was specifically experienced in our stack, but we learned over, you know, a long time, I don't care if someone's got React experience or Angular experience. I just want a developer who's good. They can pick up any language. It's just creative problem solving at the end of the day.
Yeah, outside of major stack changes, like it's sometimes hard to get a developer to go from, Java or old IBM to React because there might be some challenges there. But overall, yeah, somebody is a good developer and they're able to work within a system. We talk about, and I think you kind of highlighted one of the points we emphasize is, do you have an in-house strength already? So obviously, your founder being good at something, your co-founder being good at something, is a strength, and he's able to do this. So don't reinvent the wheel. If he is good at Angular, don't try to pretend to go to .NET and go Microsoft because that's going to be harder for you guys. That's a higher lift. Keep it simple as much as possible, especially at the beginning. So from a business perspective, where are you guys at numbers wise? How many users are students? How many universities are on board? How many people are serving as mentors? And how do you? I guess you're recruiting both universities and mentors, right?
So we work with universities all across Australia and the UK. We take on a lot of the market in Australia and an increasingly larger part of the market in the UK. And then the students, though, actually come from all over the world. So even though we've only really got customers in two major markets, we've got students using us from over 100 different countries around the world. And that's because students engage with universities from everywhere.
Wow.
And students from all around the world study at universities in Australia and the UK. But for us, we're always looking forward, and America is the next major market for us. So we love where we're at. We love the markets that we serve, but we are looking very much in every different way we can to take on the US market, because the US market is just, not even one, but it's like it's one or two or sometimes three orders of magnitude bigger on different metrics of just what's going on in that space.
Right.
So we've come a long way, but there's still so much further for us to go.
So do the universities provide the people who serve as mentors, or they guide you in finding those folks, or do you kind of have a separate recruiting process?
It's all there. It's all their services. So, every university runs between, 20 and 100 unique support services, whether that's an individual mentoring platform or program, or a tutoring program or counseling or advising or career support, or first year civil students connecting. There are so many different support services. They run all of them already. We're not coming in to replace them. We're just here to amplify the impact that they're having. So we come in, we give them a platform, and what that does is for these people running the services, it allows them to make it geographically unbound so students can connect from everywhere. It means it's asynchronous so people can connect at any time. And then it just reduces the administrative load massively, because without us, they're running it through spreadsheets and email. So it means that more of the administrative support can go to the right things, like finding the right mentor. So look, we just empower the university to do this. We're not doing it for them. That being said, like we've seen this done like hundreds of times by different people and different universities and services. So we can guide, absolutely, but it's we don't take that off them. They handle all of that.
No, that's exciting because again, you let them focus on their strengths, right? Is that idea of, you use the term Uberizing or, Uberification of the economy. Essentially, you are the platform. All you're doing is connecting, but you're making it a seamless connection. And yes, obviously, I think it was Macquarie University I visited. I
Oh,
think so.
really?
They told me there were 85 countries represented at one university.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah. I
wild.
was there in Melbourne. I think this is way before the pandemic. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And the U.S. market is definitely a very powerful one, and I wish you the best with that. And I think that could be very powerful for students in the U.S. to have access to all the services in one place. So walk me through a hypothetical situation. How do you guys internally within your company deal with next steps of growth for the app itself? Whether it's, do you sit down and have, I don't know, a monthly or a quarterly feedback of here are the support tickets that came in, here are the new features we want to add? What are the voices in the room? How is the decision being made of what is the next iteration of development going to involve?
Look, we have a product lead, and the product lead handles all of this. So that product lead goes out and runs different kinds of, you know, like they get as much feedback as they can. So they're spending as much time with our customers as they can, with our users as they can, and with our internal team. Because our platform doesn't just serve students. It serves mentors and staff and university administrators and university execs. And it serves our team because we have a customer success team and a sales team that need to use our platform too. So they're going out there, they're getting as much feedback as they can, and they're working out where we need to go. So, it's always a balance because we always have customers or people asking for stuff, and we need to balance that with where we see the platform going in the future. So we generally use 8-week cycles. We have 6 weeks of build time and 2 weeks of cooldown, and we just do that time and time and time again. We have a roadmap that looks much further out than the next 8 weeks, but the roadmaps, like any good company, are always shifting. A roadmap for me is like a weather forecast. If the weather forecast says tomorrow it's going to be sunny, it's probably going to be sunny. Next week, it's probably decent, but if you're trying to get a weather forecast for 6 months' time, it's going to be hot or cold because it's summer or winter, and that's like our roadmaps. We've got a lot of clarity on what's coming up right now, but as it goes out, we want to leave space in there so that if a customer gives us this incredible insight, let's incorporate that. If we get an incredible opportunity to work in a new way or with a new customer that needs a small tweak, let's capitalize on that. So it's always a balancing act, though, because all customers always want everything and would love to give it to them. But we've also got to manage that against where we think the industry is going and how we see change being made. We need to build that future ourselves too.
Yeah, I think that balancing game is always a challenge because yes, they want every feature, they want it now, and they don't want to pay for it. At the same time, you have to look at what is the low hanging fruit that is going to give me the most return on my investment, and at the same time, what's going to help me bring in the next wave of customers as well, right?
Yeah.
Because for we talked about for universities, it's much easier to keep existing customers, but it's also a big lift for a company to pivot. So you provided them a platform, it works 90% of the way. Sometimes it's easier to just say, okay, yeah, you'll eventually get us that feature, but you're a new customer who may want to come on and they're asking for this specific feature. Hey, that may be exciting for you to add because that's going to open up a brand new opportunity. So essentially, the product lead in your company handles the feedback loops from students, mentors, your own customer service team, the universities, and your own development team, and sorts it out, and then makes the decisions, him or herself, on the next sprints, the next cycles of development, milestones, whatever you want to call them. Are there additional voices to speak to that, or is this more of as long as things are going smoothly, you guys trust your product lead and don't interfere too much?
There, as you mentioned, there's 1,000 voices, but they've got to take it all on. But at the end of the day, you need to empower your leadership team. If you're building a company, you need your leadership team to have authority. And if you don't have trust in them, they're going to do a terrible job. And if you're undercutting them or undermining them, you may as well go and be the product lead yourself or the sales lead yourself. It's the same in any role. So we have complete faith. I obviously will give them my opinions, but it's their decision at the end of the day. They're in charge of our roadmap. That they need to take into consideration our business direction as well and balance that. But they know our capacity and our problems and our challenges and our feedback more than I do. So if I just came over the top and said, now this, it would just be like we'd be tearing our roadmap apart and just making bad choices.
I think that's very powerful when you have scaled beyond being a founder-led company, right? You guys started with two people, with co-founders. I think that's
Those
great.
three of
And
us at the
then
beginning. We
eventually
had
you added a team.
two co-founders.
Three of you, okay.
They were just running around doing nothing, trying to just figure out what we could do, which is my co-founder Ben and I, and then Steven, my technical co-founder. He was the one adding all the value. I look back and I was just like, I felt busy all the time, but I have no idea what I was doing.
Right. So the question, then is once you become a bigger company, you have various people assigned, as we call it, right people, right seats in business processes. I think you get to a point of trusting them and developing that opportunity to say, okay, fine. You know what? We need to make sure that they're empowered and they're trusted to move the product forward. And if we see a pivot in direction that we're concerned about, we can come to them and address it. Okay, so the last question I ask everybody who comes on who works essentially in the software space, you guys are a tech company, whether you like it or not. You're not just an education company. What advice would you give to a team of young, or not necessarily young, team of fresh co-founders who are about to start their own product, of how to get into the process and not just, have ideas floating in their head?
Just 100% make sure one of you can build yourself. And if you can't, get someone who can, like as part of the co-founding team, because your first product or first crack at your product is going to be terrible. You're going to need to do it. We've done thousands of iterations and I still look at them just like, oh, there's so much more we can do. So you need the ability to build a lot of iterations, to make a lot of changes. And so I would just say, make sure you can build within. The second thing is, I would say do it in a group. It's so hard to do it on your own. Like I would have quit 100 times without my co-founders. When I'm having a bad day, they're there to pick me up. When I'm having a great day, I'm there to pick them up as well. You need that kind of balancing act, and the people around you are so important. I think, I've been with these guys for 8 years now. Like that's longer than I've been married. So these relationships are so key to me, and really cherish those relationships that you have. Like not all co-founder relationships work out. So, if you've got one of those ones that can work out, you should cherish that and work on those relationships.
I think you nailed a lot of the concerns that I hear. Is yes, to be able to be really agile, really quick in your iteration, because that speed of iteration. I've heard Sergey Brin and Larry talk about that from Google. Is when you're small, your advantage is agility, right? You're not a Titanic. You're a tiny little, 2-person rowboat. Then change directions quickly, pivot. In your case, 3-person rowboat. And I think that that's a powerful thing to be able to quickly adapt. And yes, having an in-house technical lead is a very important thing. I think eventually you need a product lead, you need a sales lead, but having somebody who technologically can make adjustments on the fly and throw them out there to be tested, and throwing them out there beyond just theory, and letting the real life customers give you feedback and say, yeah, that's not what we needed. Okay, let's pivot. Let's quickly adjust. And until you nail that. But yeah, and I think entrepreneurship in general is a team sport. I worry for people who I see try and do this alone, because I think that's a mental health challenge and an emotional challenge. And ultimately, you will burn out. You will have a moment where your teammates need to carry you. So I think you got lucky with having good teammates and being able to do this.
Absolutely.
Joel, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. For folks who are in the university systems and wherever in the world, check out Vygo. I think it's a cool idea. I think one day we'll be seeing it on the U.S. market, and perhaps you'll hit the giant market of China, which is a little closer to you anyway. So you never know where it might go. Thank you very much for your time. Everybody else, thank you for tuning into Tectonic Lounge. Tune in next week as well for future episodes with other folks who make a difference with business in technology. Have a great day.